axe and sword. You can't feel a battle in your bones or foresee a fight. The Havamile is a book of Viking wisdom. This quote or lesson is present in it and is an important part of later Norse society. It represents how to later Nords, battle in conquering new lands was an important part of their society. But battle and conquer wasn't the only thing that was important to the Vikings, especially in the earlier years. Vikings began as a society built on fishing and farming, and eventually evolved into a society that could overthrow nations. The age of the Vikings is most commonly referred to as the years between AD 800 and 1050, when there was the most conflict caused by them. But originally, the Vikings lived in Scandinavia, where hunting, trapping, fishing, and farming were yearly practices. With their use of the fertile soil, livestock, and tools, they were much more advanced than many Western civilizations. Vikings lived in small houses with small, close-knit societies that were largely self-sufficient. It was only after conquering most of Europe that they became larger and more industrial, with certain cities such as Jorvik in Great Britain became specialized manufacturing centers. As I said before, Vikings began as farmers and fishers. But eventually, although the reasons for it remain unclear, the Vikings began to venture to other lands. These lands they then seized for trading posts and new territory for Scandinavian rulers. These Vikings made enormous profits from the land and raiding the churches in those lands. They raided these churches because they believed in different deities than the Vikings. At this time, most of Europe was Christian in religion, so the religion of the Nords differed drastically. Prior to the Christianization of Scandinavia, Nords had a pagan religion in which they worshipped multiple gods, with 8 gods being their more main gods and the other being minor gods. The father of these gods and goddesses was Odin, who had many children, but the most important of these was Thor, who was known for wielding the mighty hammer Mjolnir. The twin gods are Freya and Freyr. Freya is the god of love, beauty, as well as battle, and Freyr is the god of fertility. Tyr is the god of war and plays an important role in the story of Fenrir. 3 other gods and goddesses play an important part in Norse mythology and their fables. These are Loki, the trickster, Heimdall, the guardian, and Hel, the queen of the dead and afterlife. But the question remains as to how the Vikings were able to conquer so many other nations. This was due to their superior seafaring and combat techniques. They were a formidable force on the battlefield, if not a completely uniform one. Although most Vikings did not have a set outfit or wardrobe, all Vikings wore a simple tunic. Many were like this, some were more simple without the embroidering on the collar, but the more rich Vikings did have that embroidering. Most, if not all, wore chainmail. This chainmail could weigh anywhere from 30 to 60 or 70 pounds depending on the size of the person. My chainmail weighs like 30-35 pounds. So you can imagine wearing that and going into battle. They needed a lot of endurance and strength. If the Vikings could afford it, they would wear a gambeson of leather underneath the chainmail. This would protect them a little bit more from force, and also would protect them from the chainmail. Because I can tell you, wearing that chainmail all day starts to wear on your shoulders. Also, the Vikings would occasionally wear helmets. Mostly the richer warriors wore helmets. They've found iron helmets in archaeological sites, and they may have wore leather helmets too, but none have been found. The helmets would be dome or cone shaped with the nose guard to protect their face from blows. The true symbol of the Norse warrior, though, was that of the wooden punch shield. And this is obviously a large shield. This would be kind of like the type of shield that the Vikings would have. It'd have made completely of wood with the iron dome in the center. And then as you can see, it just has this handle. Some shields have a strap that you strap to your arm. the Vikings just used punch shields so they could actually punch all the enemy's swords away. And this shield was normally about 1 meter in width and could weigh 11 to 15 pounds when dry, and would weigh even more if it was wet. So again, they had to be really strong to use that. Finally, their swords were simple. They were actually fairly short. And as you can see, they have a short pommel, and yeah, those are the Viking swords. They were rounded at the end and made for slashing through armor. These swords normally weighed around 4 to 5 pounds, and this armor and weaponry made the Vikings the fierce warriors that they are still known for today. Despite their fighting and conquering of many enemy nations, the Vikings had a large impact on Europe. And some of those influences can still be found today. There are a number of Viking ruins and museums, including Jorvik Viking Center in Great Britain. These centers are used to educate people today and about these Scandinavian farmers, fishers, and raiders. Also, the Vikings influenced British language and government greatly, and they turned the Greek concept of parliament into an actual application in government. The Vikings were a fierce race of warriors who began their lives in Scandinavia, but soon journeyed to distant lands where they conquered enemy nations and left their mark upon the world. There are many opportunities to learn more about the Nords and to learn their beliefs and lessons, such as the unwise man is awake all night, worrying over and again. When the morning rises, he is restless still, his burden as before.